Marcus Mossaya Garvey was born in St. Anne's Bay, Jamaica on August the 17th, 1887. His childhood was deeply rooted in the peasant environment, which largely surrounded him. He once described an uncle for whom he sometimes worked as a sharecropper. His own parents also engaged in small scale peasant farming. Garvey was not a typical peasant experience. Garvey was not a typical peasant experience. However, his father, a descendant of the Maroons, Jamaica's ex-African slaves who successfully defied the slave regime, was also a skilled tradesman, a stonemason. Garvey's background further distinguished him from the typical peasant in that his father possessed a library among whose volumes Garvey developed an early taste for reading. His childhood was characterized by an inadequate elementary education, supplemented by private tutors and Sunday school. His leadership ability seems to have manifested itself from the very beginning, for his physical prowess gave him a position of eminence amongst his peers. At the age of 14, by which time he had already become apprentice to a local printer, Garvey left school. 2 years later, he moved to Kingston, Jamaica, capital city, where he obtained work. By the time he was 18, he had achieved what he later described as an excellent position as manager of a large printing establishment. This was an outstanding achievement, making Garvey the youngest foreman printer in Kingston, and at a time when many foremen were still being imported from Great Britain and Canada. Participation in a strike during which he consented to lead the workers despite assurances of favor from management cost him his job. He then obtained new employment with the government printery. In Kingston, Garvey quickly immersed himself in the intellectual and political life of the city. By 1909, his political involvement had brought him into the National Club, organized by a lawyer and legislative council member, Sandy Cox. Garvey was elected one of the assistant secretaries of this club, which he sought to combat privilege and evils of British colonialism on the island. In 1910, Garvey embarked on the first of many wanderings in foreign lands. He went to Costa Rica, where he worked for a while as a timekeeper on the United Fruit Company banana plantation as a laborer on the pier. And as a laborer on the pier at Port Limon. Edited a paper, Le Nation, harassed the British Council concerning his non-protection of many British West Indian laborers working there, was arrested for urging workers to strike for better conditions, and was eventually expelled from the country or left to escape the authorities. Introduction. We have any questions, anything about Garvey's background up to this point? I think you muted, bro.
My bad. One critical thing to our training and our officers training, we always talk about dates. So one thing is everybody knows his birthday, right? August 17th, 1887.
Yes.
And that's very critical because the first school was 3 years before Garvey's death, which would be 1937. So that's how you could remember that. I'm sorry, 1940. Garvey died June 10th, 1940. So those two dates is very critical. June 10th, 1940 was when he died, and August 17th, 1887 is when he was born. And according to our teachings and message to the people, officers training, the first class was 1937. So that's how I kind of remember that class from his birth, the day he passed, and his birthday. That's just critical dates that we should know as Garveyites.
Okay. Oh, I was about to say there was more to like his work in Panama, but I guess we're about to get into it here. He
Hmm.
continued for the next year or so to wander through Latin America, going to such places as Panama and Ecuador, where West Indian workers had migrated in large numbers in search of work. He observed the universal degradation of the Black race, worked immensely to finance his travels, started another small paper, the Coleon Panama, and agitated among and ad, help me out here, agitated it among Black workers. A Black worker in Coleon at the time remembers meeting Garvey around 1912 as he addressed the predominantly Black Coleon Federal Labor Union. There is a possibility that Garvey may have stopped briefly, perhaps in transit at a seaport somewhere in the United States during this period. From Central America, Garvey returned briefly to Jamaica, and by the autumn of 1912, undebted by a lack of money, he was in England, where his only surviving sister, Indiana, was working as a governess. In England, he indulged his love of public speaking at Hyde Park Speaker's Corner, was a regular visitor to the House of Commons, and worked for the African Times and Orient Review, the foremost Pan-African journal of the day. He found the time to visit Scotland, Ireland, France, Italy, Spain, Austria, Hungary, and Germany. Garvey said later that he attended some lectures in law at Birkbeck College of the University of London. In July of 1913, Garvey was, not surprisingly, almost destitute, and he applied for government assistance, possibly because of his job at the African Times and Oriental Review. However, his article for the magazine was published in the October issue. He was able to eke out an existence for almost another year. By May of 1914, when he was probably again without employment, the Anti-Slavery and Aborigines Protection Security, excuse me, invented intervened on his behalf, dispatching him to the colonial office with an offer of a contribution from the society if the colonial office would put up some of the money to repatriate him to Jamaica, pretty much meaning return him back to Jamaica. I know what it means. I just have a hard time pronouncing it. Sorry.
I got you.
Early in June, to raise a fund to meet passage money and offered. Oh, early in June, the society informed the colonial office that Garvey was endeavoring to raise funds to meet passage money and offered to match equally any amount the colonial office pro, pro, was it proffered. Garvey managed to do without the largest largesse of the two agencies. However, he succeeded in raising his fare home and left England June 17, 1914. Garvey's first sojourn in England was of great importance to his career. The workings of British democracy made a lasting impression on him, and like later generations of visiting from the colonialized world to the metropolis, he noted the contrast in autocrat in auto, Lord, which the very same colonializers maintained their tropical dependencies. He was often to call in the years to come for an extension of British justice to the colonies. England gave him an opportunity, too, to enhance his already wide knowledge of worldwide sufferings of Black people. In the pages of African Times and Orient Review, there appeared regularly articles by and about such leading Black figures as Booker T. Washington, Edward Wilmot, Blyden, John Edwards Bruce, W.E. Du Bois, William Ferris, to name a few. Edward Wilmot Blyden. Why does that name sound familiar? I'm horrible with names.
The Minister of Information. That's his grandfather. That's his actual grandfather. He's really deep. I don't know if he's the minister right now, but his actual title is a president of the Buffalo Division. And his name is Lion Blyden, and that's his grandfather. I believe that's his grandfather. I don't think it's his father. Wilmot Blyden, I think it's his grandfather. So yes. Yeah, I learned that. I learned that in my orientation back in the day. That's all right. Yeah, that's why it sounds familiar.
Okay, some of these would before long be his associates in the United States. Garvey also came into contact with Black seamen and students whose sufferings he observed, and with the many people of color he visited the offices of the journal. And the fact that the journal combined a Pan-African outlook with a wide coverage of Middle and Far Eastern nationalist struggles, and indeed all anti-colonial struggles, contributed further to Garvey's growth and influenced his future outlook. It's interesting, one of the videos I was just watching about Tony Martin, he said that about a year or so after Garvey had died, there was a group of, it was like the only time that he had found that another race had actually successfully joined the UNIA was an Indian group that was in Jamaica, because at that time they just went through the application, they had filled out the application because they had worked with Blacks, and they were also, you know what I mean, under like the British colonial rule,
right, in
Jamaica, and they had actually applied and got approved to be in the UNIA. And it's like they don't said to this day, he's not sure how they slipped through the cracks. But he was like, that's the only time that he had ever found that another race was actually able to join the UNIA. But it's interesting because they, apparently, with like his journal or whatever, he covered more than just Black people in like the journal. He covered all people under oppression in the journal.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
All right. Garvey arrived back in Jamaica on July 15th, 1914. His head bristling with ideas on making a living and founding a racial movement. To secure the former, he tried selling greeting and condolence cards and monumental tombstones. To secure the latter, he formed 5 days after his arrival the Universal Negro Improvement and Conservation Association and African Communities Imperial League. The title bore testimony to the enlarged vision brought about by his travels and the fear, which he never relinquished, that weak races were doomed to slavery and possibly extinction. In this regard, he wrote, "For the last 10 years, I have given my time to the study of the conditions of the Negro, here, there, and everywhere. And I have come to realize that he is still the object of degradation and pity the world over, in the sense that he has no status socially, nationally, or commercially within a modicum of exception in the United States of America." Garvey became the president and traveling commissioner of the new organization, among whose stated objectives were fostering of a universal confraternity.
Brother James.
Yes.
Before you say that word should mean something.
I know, because we was in the lessons about a week ago.
That's the first.
Yes.
Fraternity.
Aim and objective.
Say
it again, Brother Frank. Confraternity. Like, that's what you said?
Fraternity with
confraternity.
Confraternity.
Thank you, Brother Frank.
That's the number one. That's the first aim and objective. That's how I remember it. It's the first
Oh,
one.
I remember. I remember the word, but pronouncing it is
Yeah.
a whole other issue. Maybe I was just making it harder than what it actually was.
Mhm.
No, it seemed like it's pronounced differently. That's what it is.
So the difference I think with a fraternity and a confraternity is that a confraternity can include men and women.
Ah,
It's kind of a
That's
universal.
interesting.
I think so. That's because I'm like, why didn't they just say fraternity? But words were different 100 years ago.
Right. They was using the real English.
right, right. Okay. Amongst the race, the establishment of a central nation for Black people, the setting up of educational institutions, and a pledge to work for better conditions among Negroes everywhere. Amy Ashwood, whom he had met at the weekly meeting of the East Queen St. Baptist Literary and Debating Society, became its secretary. The association was formed. She said on the second meeting. A few days later, an inaugural meeting took place at the Collegiate Hall, Kingston, presided over by the mayor of Kingston. Recruiting was slow, even though Garvey worked tirelessly and succeeded in establishing himself in the minds of many as an agitator and a nuisance, Lord. Many respectable Negroes who had not yet learned to love their Blackness opposed his movement. As Garvey wrote later, I had to decide whether to please my friends and be one of the Black whites of Jamaica or be reasonably prosperous. Oh, Lord. Or come out openly and defend and help improve and protect the integrity of the Black millions and suffer. After about a year, the organization could boast only about 100 members. Up to this time, its activities were largely confined to Kingston. In November 1915, however, its first public speaking outside Kingston was held in Garvey's hometown of St. Ann's Bay. The Jamaica Times reported, right merely did the people of the town turn out to listen to their fellow townsmen. Garvey had planned to undertake a fundraising lecture tour in the United States beginning this very month, having received an assurance of support from Booker T. Washington, but the latter's death caused him to postpone his trip until 1916. Garvey arrived in New York on March the 23rd, 1916 for a lecture tour, which he thought would last 5 months and would be confined to Black audiences, mostly in the South. He arranged for his mail to be delivered to an address in Jamaica during his absence and let it be known wherever he went in America that he was raising funds for an industrial institute to be established in Jamaica. Garvey's advent into the United States did not find him as much a stranger to conditions as some are led to believe. For one thing, his wide reading on racial matters had obviously included the racist conditions in North America. More than this, though Garvey's visit to the United States came in the midst of a large-scale migration of West Indians to that country. The toing and froing of persons and ideas generated by this migration meant that adapting to the United States was probably not too much of a problem for new arrivals. One of the things that started like the scale was they had shut down like the ports in Central America. So a lot of the workers there that were building ships and working on ships in Central America had shut down, and that because they were mainly there to build the Panama Canal. So once the canal was actually finished, a lot of like those people like that was in that trade and came to the United States looking for work. So that was right why it was like a large migration at that time. But anyway, by March 1916, Garvey's sense of mission, his conviction that had been called upon to emancipate his race, had developed into an uncanny degree. Shortly before leaving Jamaica, he had written a letter to Robert Russa Moulton, Booker T. Washington's successor at Tuskegee. I am now talking with you as a man with a mission from the high God. Even though he still thought that Jamaica would be the main field of his assertions, he had nevertheless already mapped out the course he was to follow over the next few years. He wrote in the same letter, I have many large schemes in my mind for the advancement of my people that I cannot expose at the present to the public, as in such a case, my hopes of immediate success would be defeated, as my enemies are so many that they are ever anxious to mistreat me, misrepresent me. I have firstly to found a press of our own to get some of the working started, so as to demonstrate my true intentions. Once in the United States, Garvey found lodgings with a Jamaican family in Harlem, came down with pneumonia, obtained a work as a Lord. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Once in the United States, Garvey found lodgings with a Jamaican family in Harlem, came down with pneumonia, obtained work as a printer, and saved enough to start out on his fundraising tour through the states. He gave his address at the time as 53 West 140th Street in Harlem. By June, he was lecturing in Boston. By November, demonstrating again the amazing mobility which had characterized his Central American and European visits. He had already visited, amongst other places, New York, Boston, Philly, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. He had also met a goodly number of prominent national and local Afro-American leaders. Among them were John Edward Bruce, whom he called a true Negro, a man for whom he had the strongest regard, a Dr. R.R. Wright Jr., Dr. Parks, Vice President of the Baptist Union, Dr. Trilly, one of the Methodist Episcopal Church of Philadelphia, Reverend J.C. Anderson, whom he described only as being of Quinn Chapel, Miss Ida Wells Bennett, of anti-lynching fame. Oh, Ida B. Wells. Magazine editor, Fenton Johnson and William H. Ferris. Bruce had been an agent of the for and a regular contributor to the African Times and Orient Review. Ferris had once written an article for the same magazine in which he praised Garvey's October 1913 article, which had appeared a few months before his. Ferris was later to edit Garvey's weekly Negro World from 1920 to 1923 and to hold a variety of high offices within the UNIA. Bruce, after an initial period of skepticism, became a regular contributor to and a member of the editorial boards of both the Negro World and Garvey's daily Negro Times. Until his death in 1924, he remained the staunchest of Garvey's supporters amongst Afro-American intelligentists. Help me out, Frank. Intelligence.
I don't see where you at.
Yeah, I'm listening to you.
Oh,
Intelligentsia. Intelligentsia at the bottom. Afro-American
Intelligentsia.
intelligentsia.
It's Italian. Don't worry about it. It's a different language. You good?
Okay. All right. Garvey's whirlwind tour took him through 38 states and lasted about a year. He returned at the end of it to New York City, where he established a temporary base, Harlem, only recently converted into the Black section of New York, was already a vital virtual capital of the Black world. Its population, composed in the vast majority of Southern and West Indian-born immigrants, was possessed of a rare vitality containing it, as it did a high proportion of radicals of all types and large number of outstanding Black creative artists. Race uplifting groups of all kinds abounded, and the main thoroughfare, Lenox Avenue, was a favorite haunt of soapbox operators. Harlem, however, was but a microism of the Black world of the World War I period. The subjugation of Africa by European imperialists was still a fresh memory. In response to this, an infinite number of nationalist and Pan-African organizers had come into being in Africa, Europe, North America, the West Indies, Central and South America, everywhere the Black people lived, and all looking towards restoration of African independence. Apart from the African question, Black communities everywhere had local problems of their town. The Black man was almost everywhere in the state of subjugation. Garvey, in his involvement in the Prentice strike, and his participation in Jamaica's National Club, in his agitation among Black workers in Central America, in his travels in Europe, and his formation of the UNIA Conservation, had dropped out of the title along the way, had embodied the spirit of Black protest which characterized the age. It was inevitable, therefore, that he should be tempted by Harlem, the most highly politicized Black community in the world. Garvey moved onto the center of Harlem stage with all ease and self-confidence of the man with a mission. He took to the streets, joining the soapbox and the stepladder of orators. He formed political alliances with some of Harlem's prominent radicals. Someone who knew Garvey at the time recalled that he could throw his voice around three corners without batting an eyelash. On June the 12th, 1917, Harlem intellectual Hubert Harrison invited Harvey to address a mass meeting attended by 2,000, held at the Bethel AME Church for the purpose of organizing Harrison's Liberty League. Garvey himself, before his tour through the states, had held a not too successful meeting in the course of which he fell off the platform. The Liberty League meeting was a windfall. However, he was a tremendous success. Shortly before, or perhaps shortly after, Harrison's meeting, Garvey began to hold weekly meetings of his own every Sunday at 3 p.m. in Harlem's Lafayette Hall at 131 Street and Lenox Avenue. The meetings were slated to continue until October 1917, and Garvey was still being billed as head of the UNIA and ACL of Jamaica. At one of these Sunday meetings on July 8th, less than a month after the Liberty League gathering, Garvey's address devoted to the denunciation of conspiracy of the East St. Louis riots. The first New York branch of the UNIA may have already been formed by this time, for the association's address was given as 235 West 131st Street. The subject of the lecture shows that Garvey had once again demonstrated the propensity, as in Costa Rica and Panama, of quickly becoming embroiled in purely local issues of wherever he happened to be. Garvey's first UNIA branch in New York, as well as a second attempted early in 1918, was besieged by being auxiliary to the Jamaican headquarters. Garvey himself, as president of the Jamaican division, did not hold office in them. But these efforts to establish UNIA branches were disrupted by attempts by socialists and Republicans to return them to public clubs. On a third attempt based on the wishes of a nucleus of 13 members, Garvey consented to be president of the New York branch, thus concretizing a decision that he had in likelihood already contemplated, namely a cast down his bucket in the United States. With this move, New York City supplemented Kingston, Jamaica as UNIA headquarters. A schism developed in this new attempt but Garvey weathered the storm. The association meeting place had meanwhile moved from Lafayette Hall to the Palace Casino, where it remained for almost 1918. One of the things I just want to point out is that one of the biggest things that we had lost in our community, that when you go back and you look at just about all the people that he named that he met up with or wanted to meet up with in the United States that were leaders that within the Black community or seen as leaders in the Black community. There were two things going for them. One, they established a business where they hired and put to work Black people. Yeah. Two was the church. And when we lost the church, when the church no longer wanted to be seen as the political meeting place, or even the social, economic, I can't even say economic, but the gathering place for us to be able to come together and work out our social ills. Once that was taken away, a lot of our continuity and us coming together as a people went away. That was one of the biggest things and one of the smartest things that our opposers were able to do, was to scare the church and taking away their tax exemption and getting us scattered and separating us, because that was the biggest place. And when you go throughout history and you look at like the marches, all of these organizers, just about everything was organized in a church. Whether people were members of that church or not was a whole different discussion. Right. Everything was there at the church. That was the meeting place.
You know, to interject on that too, Brother James, I'm not sure if we went over this in training yet or not, or where I heard it from. But one of the things why Garvey chose Sundays at 3 p.m. Didn't we just talk about this?
Yeah, we were talking about this too the other day.
It was he wanted to wait for church to let out, right?
Right.
So he understood the value of church, but he also, like from what you're saying, I think that came to his favor a little bit, that the church might have been getting out of certain things, and he used that platform to say, at the church, we can get in this critical thinking and political speeches here. Right. So that makes good sense, what you're saying.
Tony Martin, in one of his speeches, was saying that ministers would have their whole congregation join the UNIA. Mm-hmm. And this was throughout all of them, throughout the United States. The minister would catch on to whatever Garvey is doing and being like, yeah, this is what we need to do. And he would get the whole congregation to join. So he was turning their memberships, like hundreds of people at a time, just because he got the minister to join. or he got the ear of the minister, and that minister was able to relay that same message to the people. And we lost that when we lost, you know what I mean, the church as a meeting place.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think Malcolm's father was a minister doing that. He did that as well.
And he was a Garveyite.
Yep, and he was a Garveyite. Yep, it's crazy, right?
Yeah. Still can't believe he bashed himself in the head and then threw himself in front of a train to commit suicide. That's a long way to go.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Anyway, Garvey's first UNIA branch in New York, as well as a second attempted. Sorry about that. Once Garvey had decided to remain in the United States, he moved on with new vigor. The UNIA was incorporated under the laws of New York on July 2nd, 1918. On July 31st, the African Communities League was incorporated as a business corporation. A month or two later, the Negro World appeared, destined to become the most widely circulated of race papers and the bane of European colonists. Garvey initially edited it. The earliest issues were distributed free by being pushed under people's doors in early hours. That's one of the things that I think we were discussing and talking about, and how to be able to establish accounts and a lot of other things to see how UNIA was first incorporated, so we can get those incorporation papers in order to be able to move forward to do different type of businesses. I think that came up in one of our meetings before, and we was trying to figure out how.
Oh, we got it. We had a charter now. That's what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
We got the charter. Yeah, so we could use the charter. But to go back on that as well, the Negro World, we I don't know when they brought it back or how it's going, but I got the new magazine. It's on our website too. But
Okay.
it's $3. So if you know somebody that you think the information would be good for, just let me know. I take the hit. I just want to get the information out for right now. But I think I like how they're doing the Negro World. It looks very good. It's a professional magazine. So I really like it. That's all I had to say on that. I just saw the Negro World, and that's the magazine that we're pushing, and it's in our Jesus Christ school store. It's on our website store, the Barca-Clarke store. It's on our website store.
I'm glad I ain't the only one getting tripped up tonight. Okay.
No.
Yeah. During the year, Garvey embarked on his first fundraising tour outside of New York after moving the UNIA headquarters. His first stop was Detroit, where he was hit in the head by a stone thrown by a heckler. On his return to New York, his secretary, Amy Ashwood, who had accompanied him, was summoned to the district attorney's office a total. She wrote later of 17 times. Wow. The authorities, it seems, suspected Garvey of raising funds for non-existent Back to Africa enterprise. It's funny that one of the main things, especially back then, was like, you don't want to be here, then leave. But then when you start to organize people to actually leave, you know what I mean, from the United States to the country that the United States set up for us to leave and go to, they were upset about it and they wanted to block it. It's like, we don't want you here, but we don't want you to go. We just want to control you. We want you here if we can control you. You know what I mean? But otherwise, not. On November the 11th, 1918, the New York Times reported a meeting of 5,000 persons presided over by Garvey at the Palace Casino. The meeting celebrated the end of World War I by calling in allied powers to hand over the ex-German colonies in Africa back to Black rule. Several persons, amongst them socialists A. Phillips Randolph and Ida Wells Bennett, were nominated at the meetings to lobby on behalf of the UNIA at the upcoming Paris Peace Conference. The UNIA eventually dispatched a Haitian as High Commissioner to lobby during the conference, since most Afro-Americans were being denied passports to France by the United States government. Let's keep in mind that at this time, Haiti was actually a very affluent country.
Whoa, Brother James.
Yeah.
Are you teaching or you reading? You just lost me.
No, I was just making a comment that
Okay. I thought,
person,
all right, you good.
That the UNIA, that the person that they had sent to lobby on behalf of the UNIA for Germany to release its hold on African countries came from Haiti. And I was just reiterating that at this time, Haitian was an independent and wealthy country.
Right.
Shortly after the November meetings, Miss Wells Barnett, Lord, addressed the UNIA gathering in New York. On this occasion, however, she annoyed Garvey by advising against the idea of a return to Africa and establishment of what was subsequently to become the Black Star Line Steamship Corporation. Like most people who saw Garvey in action, she later testified to the remarkable sway which he exercised over his audience. By 1919, Garvey was already firmly established as one of Harlem's most important radical figures. And it was during this year that his fame spread over the globe. Before the year had ended, he would be regularly discussed in the press and in governmental circles in Europe, Africa, West Indies, and elsewhere. In March of 1919, another large meeting at the Palace Casino, Garvey claimed that W.E. Du Bois had humbugged the activities of his High Commissioner in France. The desire for Afro-American lobby at the Paris Peace Conference was responsible for bringing together a group of Harlem radicals and other prominent individuals at the home of wealthy but race-conscious Madam C.J. Walker. Garvey among those present at the meeting, out of which grew short-lived International League of Darker Peoples. In June of 1919, Garvey incorporated his Black Star Line Steamship Incorporation. By this time, Garvey claimed later, the UNIA had about 30 branches and over 2 million members. The figure apparently included sympathizers as well as members in any strict sense. But the spread of his ideas by this time could not be gainsaid. As early as 1918, the Negro world had been reaching places as far as Panama, and throughout 1919, Garveyites were blamed by colonial authorities for anti-white riots in Jamaica, Trinidad, and British Honduras, amongst other places. In October of 1919, Garvey, fast approaching the peak of his career, had been closest escape from an ultimate untimely death. Several shots were fired at him by one George Tyler, one of which found him up. The wounds were minor. However, Tyler died mysteriously, supposedly jumping to his death from the cell where he was awaiting a court appearance.
African Legion. That military.
Anyway, it was widely suspected that he had planned to implicate others in his assassination attempt. Yeah. A little over 2 months after this attempt on his life, on Christmas Day in 1919, Garvey married Amy Ashwood during a lavish spectacle at the Liberty Hall, now the UNIA's own meeting place. In 1916, she had left Jamaica for Panama, but had become reunited with Garvey in the spring of 1918 when she had moved to the United States. The marriage was over by 1920, the couple having parted company amid a welter of accusations and counter-accusations concerning infidelity, financial misdealings, and political strategies. I wonder how much of that was actually true and how much of it was actually made up and put into place. We know how the United States gets down when it comes to trying to break up marriages and Black unions and everything else. Anyway, in 1920, witnessed the first International Convention of Negro Peoples of the World, organized by Garvey. At the opening session at Madison Square Garden, New York, an overflow crowd of 25,000 filled the arena and spilled out into the streets. The other sessions took place in Liberty Hall in Harlem. Delegates who came from all over the Black world adopted the Declaration of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World. This declaration listed the main grievances of the race that demanded their resolution. Notice was served on European colonists that the Black man had an inherent right to possess himself of Africa, regardless of the claims of any other race or nation. Demands were made for the capitalization of the N in Negro, for the teaching of Black history in schools, for the teaching of Black history in schools, for the teaching of Black history in schools. I'd have lost my place now messing around. For an end to lynching and sundry and other discriminations. The red, black, and green were adopted as the colors of the race. August 30th, the last day of the month-long convention, was proclaimed international holiday for Black people, and the universal Ethiopian anthem was adopted. During the course of the convention, Garvey was elected president, President General of the UNIA and Provisional President of Africa, the mayor of Monrovia, I should know this, Monrovia, Liberia, Gabriel Johnson. Gabriel Johnson was elected supreme
potentate.
Thank you, or ceremonial leader. Several others were elected leaders of various parts of the Black world.
So hold on real quick. The potentate is kind of, I learned this in orientation from Atlanta back in the day. It's like a king type thing. The potentate has been eliminated from our Constitution. I think Garvey got the potentate. He eliminated that position. Now that's very important. But you may see it in the Constitution, but that position, from what I understand, is no longer. Another thing that's important is the Declaration of Rights of the Negro People. From what I understand from Brother Roz, I didn't hear this from Brother John. I think there are 54 Declaration of Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World. Brother John recited all 54 of them at one of those conventions. So when you deal with Brother John and we start talking about dates and you start talking about aims and objectives, and it's for us in the training, you have to understand where he's coming from. He's coming from a place where he's studying a little differently. He's memorizing as a Garveyite would in that class. Remember that class was like 8 hours and stuff like that. He deals with that. He's coming from that point. Is all I'm trying to say.
He also said that he's rewriting all of this stuff. So
yeah, he's all in. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. Yeah, he's really all in with it. And so I just, so when you're dealing with him, he's been taught. He's been taught differently, and he comes from like a different avenue. That's pretty much what I was trying to say. He really memorizes it, which is very powerful. But that's really something that we'll get into probably after orientation. But I believe that's when they that's just an important that we need to start talking about at some point. The Declaration of Rights of Negro People of the World, because that's what they came with. They announced all 50 of them, 54 of them, I believe. I just wanted to state that.
All right. Well, it's 8:30. We keep going or we stop here or
Where we at? What page
page
we on?
13. Page 13.
Did we finish it?
Mm-mm.
Let's finish page 13 and we can end there
All right.
if you want to do that.
Also, in 1920 was the birth of the UNIA's Negro Factories Corporation, which over the next 2 or 3 years managed a number of UNIA businesses, including laundries, restaurants, a doll factory, tailoring, and millinery establishments, and a printing press. Some of these ventures had been in operation since 1918. For Ida Wells Barnett, reported having been shown a UNIA restaurant and some unspecified smaller undertakings by Garvey in that year. By 1921, Garvey was unquestionably the leader of the largest organization of its type in the history of the race. He had succeeded as no one else had in gathering up the worldwide feelings of dismay at the loss of independence and defiance against colonialism and oppression, which characterized the new Negro spirit of that age. As of August the 1st, 1921, the UNIA contained 418 charter divisions, up from 95 the year earlier. Plus 422 not yet chartered. There were an additional 19 chapters, none the previous year, making a total of 859 branches. In 1 year, Garvey's unparalleled success had the effect of arraying against him most powerful conglomeration of hostile forces. The United States government was against him because they considered all Black radicals subversive. European governments were against him because he was a threat to the stability of their colonies. The communists were against him because he successfully kept Black workers out of their grasp. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and other integrationalist organizations were against him because he argued that white segregationists were the true spokesman for white America, and because he in turn advocated Black separatism. His organization had to contend with unscrupulous opportunists who were not above sabotaging its workings for personal gain. In 1921, opposition from all these forces escalated to a remarkable extent. First, the United States Department of State almost prevented Garvey from re-entering the country after his short trip to the Caribbean area. He managed to make it back, however, barely in time for his second international convention. Then, at his annual convention, the communists, spearheaded by their Black auxiliary, the African Blood Brother, African Blood Brotherhood, made an unsuccessful bid to capture his following. Meanwhile, the NAACP, through its major Black spokesman, W.E. Du Bois, was steadily increasing its campaign of attacks in its organ, the Crisis, and elsewhere. The Black socialists, too, had begun to criticize Garvey. The British authorities were busy pursuing the policy they had begun in 1919 of banning the Negro world, prohibiting UNIA officials from entering their colonies, and generally doing whatever they could to thwart the spread of Garvey's influence. Finally, on January the 12th, 1922, Garvey was arrested for allegedly mail fraud. This was a signal that redoubled its efforts on the part of his enemies, who presumed his guilt and called for his arrest and deportation. Despite all of this, the UNIA managed to push ahead. The Daily Negro Times appeared in 1922. A Black man magazine projected, but did not in fact appear until much later. Garvey's second marriage took place during this year to his private secretary, Amy Jacques. One of the things I want to point out real fast is his meeting when he first went to Detroit. Elijah Muhammad was there.
Yep, I was going to say that. I'm glad you said that. That's very important.
And that meeting had a profound effect on Elijah Muhammad, because when you look at how he set up the Nation of Islam, and even like the teachings of the Nation of Islam, you can tell that these are all direct teachings of Garvey.
Yes. You know, I thought about Elijah Muhammad in our officer training when he was talking about like how to eat, how to take care of your throat when you're speaking. Like Garvey's breaking down, he's telling us as leaders how to eat and how to do things like that. And then I really started thinking like, damn, Elijah Muhammad really adopted all the way from African allegiance to the Nation of Islam security, and how everything is similar. But when you look at, if you're not a study of Garvey, you won't know that. But if you look at like Garvey, I mean, he actually kind of was rocking the military, so he was like at the fifth power of it. But that, I'm glad you said that. I wanted to mention that. Yeah, that meeting in Detroit, Elijah Muhammad was supposed to be there. That's a powerful event.
So, anybody else got anything they want to throw in? Remember page 14, man.
We starting on page 14.
Yeah.
Where it says Garvey's last full year, right?
In 1923, he was convicted. Yeah.
Okay, got you. All right, so we finished that. We starting. I got you. That was our last one we finished. I'll highlight that.
So I got this website. I think I might email it or text it to everybody. But it has a lot of different letters and articles that Garvey wrote and other people wrote, like the FBI when they were doing the investigation of him. It's a lot of different stuff. It's like I think it's a UCLA library thing where they were doing research, and they have a lot of these actual documents. I also found this that the New York Library has a lot of stuff that they have on microfilm, you know, and it's like old UNIA documents, because that's how I started my search. I was wondering a lot about his recruitment strategy. But one of the things that when they really started to get a lot more members, especially down in Jamaica and a lot of the Latin American countries, was because of the war with Great Britain when Jamaica was fighting for their independence. So when you heard in the beginning of what you read tonight, he said, yeah, you know, people were thinking I was crazy and they was, you know, looking at me funny, but regardless of how crazy I am, I'm going to still keep on talking this because it needs to be heard. Right. And then eventually he, like after, I guess 1920, or no, it was 15 or 16, something like that, one of those years, when they had the war, then a lot more people started joining because it was like, oh man, now we have a reason to uplift our race. And he started getting a lot more traction. And that's how he had got up to almost 1 million members so quickly, because everybody was like, yo, man, we need to join up with this because we got to do something. So, you know, we don't have really anything big like that happening right now, but, you know, I think that we have to recognize that, you know, we still are going through a lot of those same things that they were going through 100 years ago. So like, we really got to do some work and come together and be race first on everything. But also, I wanted to share my screen real quick and show y'all something. Hopefully I can share. Close that. For anybody who want to get the book, it's available on Amazon. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Oh, not that one. Where is it at? Where did it go? You see how much it costs?
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. So go back to that. Are you serious? Are you serious? That got to be a typo.
Man, people be tripping, man, on
Well, that
Amazon and
hardcover,
eBay.
no, the hardcover is rare. You know,
You know
this is
what?
for the hardback.
You might. Okay. Shit.
So I'm ordering the paperback, which is 23, but and also James, I want to point out, I don't know if that's the whole book that you're reading from, because everything I saw said it was a preview.
Yeah, well, I just found something real fast. You know, man, I ain't want to hold everybody up.
Oh, you talking about the preface?
Yeah, so it's only got a few chapters. It's not the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, no, I plan on getting the book. I thought I had the book, but I had,
Right.
I got the different
Same
book.
here,
But
man.
yeah. There's I'm looking at it right now before you buy that a black book online book company.
Mm-hmm.
And if
That's
you
what I
give
was
me,
looking for.
okay, I will. Where's this thing at, man? Because they're always sending me emails, whatever. I bought
Because
like a
even
bunch
though
of
I
books
can get
from them.
that one tomorrow.
Hey, brother Frank, you sharing your screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
We was talking about letters. Can you click on that link I put in the chat and see if that'll open up so you can share that?
It's called United Black Library Org.
Okay.
That is the
This is one of the letters.
Yes, that's in our orientation training. That's actually on our drive. And that's one of the letters. I guess somebody was complaining to the U.S. attorney about Marcus Garvey.
Garvey must go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it has a date on that letter as it goes through. I'm sorry, I should remember this. I'm awful with dates.
It's at the top, January 15, 1923.
Yep, that's when it was, 23. Yeah, that's when they was coming.
Let me I can try to
Man,
find
this is a long letter too.
I'm gonna try to find this bookmark now.
Oh, you know what? I think it's something attached to that.
UCLA African Studies Center.
Yeah.
So I'll share that in the chat. So this little this folder here has like you see it has introduction, American series, African series, Caribbean. So you can go into each one of these and find different things. So like I click Caribbean, and then it has volume, I guess that's 11. And then you can go into like sample documents. And this is a letter from somebody in the Dominican Republic. Talking about something. But yeah, so it's a lot of stuff in here. This man went through a lot, man.
Yeah.
His life was crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're right.
Let me see if I can find that same letter. What was it, 1923?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I think you said 1923. That's just crazy because you said letter, and I just remembered I just put that on the drive when we was doing the drive. That's how I only remember because I was going through the course and I was like, letter. And when you mentioned the letter, I was that was one of them that we went over in orientation. I think that was the New York orientation. They went over that when I was Chicago.
Maurice Peterson. So like this is a couple different letters all in this sample document.
Oh, that's crazy though.
Special agents. So as you can see, man, this been
James
going
Amos. Dude from Good Times.
on. Man, this FBI and well, they didn't call them the FBI back then. It was the they were calling them special agents or intelligence agents and stuff like that. But they've been after us since the beginning, man, and that's why like we got to be careful who we put out as leaders because they're gonna go after them right away. Like we all got to be leaders.
Yeah,
they can't go after all of us. You know what I'm saying? Like
I think that was why he wanted to really focus on that the message to the people, that course in African philosophy, because he knew they was all he was declining, and he had to make sure that everything he had was saved and documented. That's just crazy how he even knew that. I think the more you research Garvey, it's always something that makes me go back and be like, not only was he creating a legacy, he knew the legacy was strong and it had to be documented. You know, he's just a powerful man. He's a powerful man.
You know, the other thing is that he had really good people up and around him.
Yes.
So, you know what I mean? And people knew what was going on. It was like, hey, man, they talking about this, they talking about that. And the person that ended up becoming his wife was pulled down, what'd she say, like 15 times? You know what I mean? Called down to like the DA's office. So, you know what I mean? He already knew that they were looking at him. You know what I'm saying? And that you know what I mean, something was going to go down.
Yeah.
So give me one moment, man. I want to put this in the chat.
Okay.
This is the Black online bookstore, the United Black Library.
Dang, hold on. Wait, why can't I? You put it in there? Oh, I got no, and I don't see it.
No, not yet. Hold on a second.
Okay.
I was trying to get back to the. It is. All right, man. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening.
All right. So I guess we'll talk about the next time we're going to go. Y'all think once a month is good for the book club since we got the training every Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
And we're doing events and bi-weekly stuff. So yeah, that'll be good. That was my fault. I invited other divisions, but I gotta send it to Sister Brenda like a week or two in advance. You know, people, she checks her emails, not like, you know, not like we would check them probably. But I'll make sure we can get more participation in the next one for sure. But all right, family. Brother James, you want to hit us with the motto, one God on closing? One of y'all, Brother James and Brother Frank?
Brother Fred.
Yes, sir. All right, great meeting. Appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully we get more people the next time. And we send out these links for the books. And as always, one God, one aim, and one destiny.
Race first.
Race first. Race first.
All right, y'all. Peace.
Peace.